South Korean workers detained in the immigration raid in Georgia are now on their way home, as we just heard. For more on this, we're joined today by Professor Min Jeong-hun, professor at Korea National Diplomatic Academy. Professor Min, thanks for joining us this morning.
Good morning.
So these workers will be returning to Seoul this afternoon, and Foreign Minister Cho Hyun says Washington has promised that these workers will not face disadvantages when they travel to the U.S. again in the future. Is it safe to say that the situation has now been completely resolved?
Yeah, personally, I think that it is safe to say that those workers will not face disadvantages when they travel back to the United States. Of course, we need to see what will actually happen when they travel back to the U.S. in the future. But anyway, I think that it would be safe for them to get back to the U.S. in the future. As you know, South Korean government secured assurances from its U.S. counterparts that the detained workers held in Georgia would face no re-entry issues when they get back to the U.S. In addition, the two countries made it clear that the detained workers would not be physically restrained like handcuffs on their way to the Atlanta airport to board the chartered flight. And more importantly, it was known that President Trump fully recognized this matter and ordered his cabinet to find a solution that there would be no problem when those skilled workers enter the U.S. and stay a while to do their jobs. And initially, the detained workers were supposed to board the chartered plane Wednesday afternoon, but the plane was delayed of unspecified U.S. circumstances. And as you reported, it was revealed that it's largely due to the fact that President Trump told his officials to encourage the South Koreans to stay in the country to continue their work. So I think what President Trump mentioned shows that there would be no disadvantages for the South Korean workers when re-entering the U.S. And South Korea understands this as confirmation that no records of illegal stay will be kept and that their return will be treated as a voluntary departure. So taken together, I believe that there would be no disadvantages when the skilled workers get back to the U.S. in the future.
Right, hopefully. And, they were supposed to board the flight on Wednesday initially, but it got delayed. And Seoul's foreign ministry says, like you just mentioned, this was because President Donald Trump asked these skilled Korean workers to stay there a little bit longer and train American workers. What's the story there? And is it a realistic plan for Korean companies to train American workers in fields such as shipbuilding or manufacturing?
Yes, and basically, I think it's a good sign that President Trump ordered the cabinet members and officials to figure out whether the South Korean workers wanted to stay and keep training the American workers during their stay. But we will see how it will work anyway. Anyway, as you mentioned, the President Trump wanted to figure out that if those skilled workers from South Korea wanted to stay and continue their work in the United States, and the President Trump recognized that they needed to stay in the United States because they need to do their work because there would be no alternatives to do their job from the American workers, and they also needed to train the American workers for the very skilled jobs. And the Foreign Minister of South Korea, Cho Hyun, mentioned that President Trump's consideration for South Korea in this manner was based on the deep bond forged between the two leaders during the successful South Korea-U.S. summit, as well as South Korea's consistent position regarding the detention issue. So I think that the detention issue could be resolved very fast because the South Korean government coped with it very speedily and appropriately. And personally, I'm really glad to see that those detained workers finally got back to home and relax, and hopefully they will get back to the United States for their job in the near future.
Right, absolutely. And what's important would be to keep this from happening again. And U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Christopher Lando is scheduled to visit South Korea tomorrow. Will this visa issue be on the agenda?
Well, I'm not sure about it. As you mentioned, it is known that he will make a 2-day trip to Seoul from Saturday through Sunday, and it will be his first visit to South Korea. And I think his visit to South Korea this time was planned well before the detention issue, and I think the two sides already fixed the agendas that they would talk about during the meetings. Specifically, it is known that the two countries would talk about the ROK-US alliance and other diplomatic and security issues like alliance modernization and the strategic flexibility of U.S. forces in South Korea. But considering the importance of the detention issue, there is a possibility that he can confirm how the Trump government perceived it and what it could do to solve the problem. And the South Korean counterparts can also utilize his visit to emphasize how important this detention issue can be for South Korea and the South Korean people, and ask for finding a solution that there would be no problem that South Korean skilled workers can stay and work in the United States in terms of creating the new type of visa for South Korean skilled workers, like E4 visa or something like that.
Right, we'll have to see how that goes. All right, Professor Min, I'm afraid that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for your insight. We appreciate it.
All right, thanks so much.